our second graph with a lot going on. We can see, if we wanted to predict some things about this graph, when you have anything in with your x, that's going to be a horizontal shift. Anything plus or minus off on the end is going to give us a vertical shift. The other thing that we do want to notice about this equation is if your a value, so the a value is in front of your sine or cosine, if it's negative, that means that you are going to have a reflection. So we need to make sure we're catching that if there's a minus sign, or if your a value is negative, you are reflecting your graph across the x-axis. But let's just go through step by step. First, we'll start with the amplitude. Well, the amplitude is that a value. It looks like a -3. The only thing we want to remember is that your amplitude will always be a positive value, so positive value, because it is a distance measurement. It's measuring the distance from the x-axis to the top of your sine or cosine cycle, and then from the x-axis to the bottom. So even though that minus sign is there, make sure you make your amplitude positive. Your period will be 2 pi over b, and b is found in front of the x, or when there's a horizontal shift, right in front of the parentheses. So b is just a 1, so 2 pi over 1, or just 2 pi for our period. Now let's think about any horizontal and vertical shifting. So we touched on it for a second at the beginning. Your horizontal shifting will shift your x values. They're the ones that go horizontally. And you want to look to see, do you have anything inside parentheses with the x? We do. We've got a minus pi inside with a parentheses. So because it's a tricky x, instead of shifting in toward the negative direction like it shows us with a minus, we are going to shift in the opposite direction. So we're going to go to the right pi, and then your vertical shift, you're looking for any numbers at the beginning or at the end that are separated with addition or subtraction. This -1 off on the end is our vertical shift. Your vertical shift is straightforward. You are going to go down because it's -1. So now we're ready to get our graph up on here. We'll start by just plotting, the amplitude and the period. Let's just get the size and the shape of our graph, and then we'll take care of the shifting. Now this is a cosine graph. Cosine graphs are going to look like this, going through your amplitude versus sine graphs that go through the origin. The only thing that we want to maybe take care of in this step, at least this is where I prefer to catch it, is that reflection. So a reflected graph, instead of starting up here, is going to start down at the bottom and come up and go back down. So I'm going to work on getting that shape for the graph. Cosine graphs go through the amplitude, but because it's reflected, I'm going to go through a -3 instead of a +3. Then I look at the period. My period is 2 pi, so I go over to 2 pi for the end of the cycle. Halfway between those 2 points will be the highest part of your graph, so that's going to be up here at a +3, and then you've got your halfway points on the x-axis. Alright, so these points will all now be shifted to the right pi and down 1. To the right pi is going to be 4 spaces on this graph. 4 spaces make up pi. We're going to run into a little bit of an issue with these 2 points on the end, because if you go to the right pi, you're off the graph. So I'll start shifting this one and see where that takes us. To the right pi and down 1, we're going to land right there. Our next one to the right pi and down 1 puts us right there. And the last one to the right pi and down 1 puts us right there. So I don't really have a lot of our graph right here. I certainly can connect what's going on so far. But we do want more points on this graph. This is where remembering how we can use the period to plot our points will really help out. Your period is 2 pi, which is 8 spaces. So I can take each point and go to the left 8 spaces, each point of my new graph. I only have 3 to work with right now. Go to the left 8 spaces, and that's going to be the corresponding point in the cycle before. So this one down here, if I go to the left 8 spaces, here's that point on the cycle before it. The next point, if I go to the left 8 spaces, puts me right there. This other one to the left 8 spaces is right there. So that fills in almost the whole thing. Now I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, and I can see that the point I'm missing should go in right there, and I'm able to fill in more of my curve. And again, I wouldn't say I have 2 full cycles yet, so just kind of figuring out where your other points should go to fill those in. Oops, I kind of missed one right there, but you get the idea. Just make sure you have a nice fluid curve. If you have a point in the wrong spot, a lot of times you can visually catch it if you look for it.